like their rooms, they used lamps like this. I brought some artifacts. They would use little lamps like this. People will ask me all the time, what's their class? And yes, there was. And this was a book that they used to write in. It had wax on it, and you used the stylus. It was called a codex. You may have heard that before.
Codex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now in the imperial period, like under Julius Caesar, you will see they used a long shield that was called a scutum and a short sword that was called the gladius. But by the 5th century, you can see that a medieval appearance is starting to show. That you see the helmets are looking more medieval, the shields are round, and the swords are long. Those are called a spada. And the spear tip gets longer. It's called an angon. And the common bow used was the reflex bow or composite bow. And Attila the Hun was famous for being able to fight on horseback and using these composite bows. They were deadly missiles. You did not want to get hit with one of those. Now, at this time, Rome is starting to crumble, and the barbarian groups are moving in. Barbarian was a word that was used originally by the Greeks to denote somebody from a different culture. But later it kind of was attributed to more primitive cultures. Around the 4th and 5th centuries, the Roman army began to recruit young barbarians because the Roman men didn't want to fight anymore. So they were called foederati, and they started to comprise big sections of the army. So after a while, the barbarians saw this as weakness, and that was one of the reasons why Rome fell, because the barbarians started moving in and testing their power and fighting them. What a lot of people don't understand is, like, when they think of barbarian, they think of, like cavemen, and that they were all, like, oh, you're really stupid and stuff like that. But actually there was a noble class. Like the word duke comes from the barbarian group. El Duce came from that. There were nobles and bishops. For the Franks, the Germanic Franks, the way that they denoted their nobility was that they used to wear their hair long. And there are Roman historians who have written passages of how the Frank nobility would come to speak to the emperor, and that their hair was long and golden and their eyes were clear blue. The Frank warriors liked to fight with an axe. It was called a francisca. And they were mostly on foot and spear. But again, you can see the medieval look to their armor. Another thing that I thought was interesting was that, like, we have certain things, like, today, like, it's very popular to tattoo yourself and things like that. They love to embellish their weapons. So they could be engraved or inlaid with gold or gems. It was kind of like, or it's kind of like us wearing a Gucci bag or something, I think. Okay, what does transportation, slavery, women, and fashion in the 5th century look like? This was a Roman luxury coach. This was like the Mercedes-Benz of Roman travel. They had other kinds of two-wheel carts and open carts, but this would be like your top model for travel. And you can see it's closed in. There's a little window. At this time, Roman and barbarian men's fashion is starting to kind of meld into one another. However, so the tunic, the leggings, those soft leather shoes were common for both groups, but the Roman men still wore a toga for a dress or ceremony. Women in ancient Rome. What my heroine is raised unconventionally. She's an only child. Her father is widowed, and he's a senator. And so she's not only been educated in the domestic arts, but he has seen to it that she learns to ride, that she has an awareness of diplomacy and mathematics. And so that's why she is chosen as one of the envoys to go to the barbarian groups to ask for their help to stand against Attila. Freeborn women were citizens but could not vote, but they did play an active role in trying to persuade the government to do certain things. They had no direct political power, but they could influence through negotiations behind the scenes. So they were known, women were known to be very powerful, but they were kind of quiet and off to the side. One of the most exceptional women of the 5th century, who owned many farms and was quite wealthy, was a woman named Melania. Yeah. They just put some samples here. They didn't have buttons and zippers, so they had to use brooches or fibulae. Those little gold V's are Merovingian bees. They were found in like hundreds of them in some of the grave sites in France for the Franks. And by this time, the hairstyles for the women are starting to loosen up. In the earlier, more imperial periods, the women wore their hair very curled and tight to their head, and now it's getting a little looser. Roman women loved to dye their hair blonde, or they would bleach their hair, or else they would get wigs made out of barbarian women's hair that were blonde. The dress for the Frank women was already moving more towards the look of a dress. Even in the 5th century, the Roman women were still wearing the stola, which is kind of a belted draped dress, with the palla was the shawl. Slavery, I get asked about that all the time. Just to keep it short, because I ran out of time. A lot of slaves, that was a class, and they were treated as household members. They weren't all tortured and beaten. They were loved. You could have a Greek slave who was the tutor to your children, who stayed with you his entire life. So it was a little bit different. My first book is being, I've moved to another publisher, so I'm getting recovered. That will be, my first book is on the Edge of Sunrise. And if I can play this, I'll just play you my trailer. And I don't know if I can do it on here. Let's see. Oh, no. All right, so I don't think I'm going to be able to show you my trailer unless I can.
Is it embedded in the slideshow?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, go to it and click on it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to manipulate your. Yeah, I don't know. I have to be able to get it to. Maybe I can show it. Oh wait, maybe. All right, can I get it big? Anna, do you know how to make this big?
Yeah, go to one of the bottom ones.
Speakers?
There's a slideshow with the screen on there somewhere. Where's the screen? Yeah, up there, right there. Next to 68, go left from 68%.
Yeah, there's a,
Oh, over here?
Right there.
okay.
I don't know, maybe I can just get it. It's embedded in the thing. Yeah. No, no.
Which
It's all
slide
right.
is it on?
It's the last slide.
It's the last slide. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see.
Okay.
Okay, well.
2 minutes. It's a 2-minute warning. Yeah.
It's only a minute, it's only a minute
It's
slide.
a 2-minute warning.
2-minute warning, right.
We have plenty of time.
Yeah, worry about it.
I don't play a lot of music on my computer.
Oh, you
No,
know,
I
yeah.
don't play any.
Is there,
An occasional YouTube video.
is there a connection to the internet?
That's okay.
Yes, that's not, oh, you mean, do you have it, is it on cloud or anything?
Oh, I don't know,
Do you
yeah.
have it anywhere else that we can access it on the internet?
Yeah, YouTube.
Is it?
Yeah.
Absolutely, let's do that.
Or,
Let's do that.
okay.
Here. That's all you had to say? That's all you had to say?
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, we're connected. But the audio might be. The edge of sunrise?
Yeah, I did, but this one. These are my books here.
Yeah.
And if you have a chance, you can come and look at some of the artifacts that I put up here. It's a very exciting period. I don't know why more people don't write in it. You know, at that time too, you have two empires. You have the East and West. They're divided. So in the story, Valentinian III is in the East and Marcian is in the West.
Awesome. Okay.
So this is just a book trailer that I made. And this is romance, yes. We're Italian. Come on.
I love it.
So a lot of authors are doing this more today. They're making trailers and then you put them up on YouTube. So if you're an author and you've been thinking about it, it's not a bad thing to have.
Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned that, making a trailer. That's what networking here is all about, to get some of the tricks of the trade from each other to share. Our next author is famous in Chicago as the owner of Cartino's. John Coletta has a new book on risotto, and it's over there, and we're really pleased to have him as a newcomer to IA Literati, John Coletta.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and I just want to first take a moment and thank Anna and both Dominic and certainly all of you for this wonderful opportunity to be here among such wonderful authors and being able to speak about the Italian culture and the references to that. This is my second book, and my perspective is it took cooking and operating a restaurant for me to be an author, which is, you know, kind of an odd way to do it, but nonetheless. Risotto and Beyond is a book dedicated to the Italian culture, the Italian table. It was released on March 13th of this year. The publisher is Rizzoli. There happens to be a rice spoon right next to it. So there's lots of great photography and imagery in the book. And yeah. So, when we think of Italian food, we think of bountiful antipasti, swirls of fresh pasta, a glorious tomato sugo or game sugo or ragu, hearty meat dishes, elaborate fish and seafood, and finally, creamy risotto. The one connection we seldom, if ever, make is Italian rice itself. Unique, it's distinct, it has wonderful varietals. It's produced today in northern Italy. Italian rice goes way beyond risotto, way beyond arborio. It's an essential component to any authentic Italian meal. Risotto and beyond brings the world of authentic Italian cuisine to life with 100 recipes for dishes using Italian varietal rice, debunking the myth that arborio is the best or the only rice to use for risotto, or that risotti are the only rice-based dishes that are found in Italian cooking. Included in the book are the usual suspects of arancini, crocchette, risotti, and rice puddings. Offered as well are some unfamiliar applications: rice salads, rice soups, rice fritters, braciola made with rice, and gelati. This is more than a collection of recipes. It is a repertoire of Italian rice cookery that delivers the full brunt of all things Italian. Italian rice cooking is one of the most calming, sensuous, satisfying cooking experiences, a comforting, versatile, and approachable, and above all, a soothing gastronomic experience. The cultivation of rice is as ancient as the making of wine and olive oil. Providing a staple on which people could survive, the first 23 pages covers the history and varieties of Italian rice alongside guidelines and equipment recommendations, and as well as to how to stock an Italian pantry, a few tips on Italian wines. Incidentally, Italian rice varietals today have grown to 145. In 1945, there was just one varietal, and that we all know is arborio. What follows are chapters of antipasti, rice soups, rice salads, risotti, one-dish meals, and the ends with rice desserts. People get very wound up, whether we're talking about a risotto should be soupy and very firm, others like them creamy and thick. Cook Italian rice as you like it. Simply do not overcook it or turn it into a mushy porridge. That's really unkind to the rice kernels as well as a challenge to your palate. Okay? Recently I made a risotto with gorgonzola, apples, and walnuts using a hand-hammered coppered chef's pan with a wooden spoon. This pot is not only stunning, but it's also magical in the ways it makes standing and stirring the rice creamy deliciousness seem less of a chore. Italian artisan pots are made and crafted of hand-hammered copper for excellent heat conductivity. A risotto pot has a 4-quart capacity, and its interiors are lined with durable non-reactive tin. The wide curved base ensures that steady absorption of broth, and the rounded bottom eases stirring. A beechwood risotto spoon, which we spoke about earlier, with the traditional circular opening which fosters a world of creamy consistency, is essential. In conclusion, you have in your hands a book with information needed to prepare positive, memorable Italian rice experiences from this book, or to improvise and to create your own personalized version. I've traveled, visited, eaten, worked, and learned the relevance of Italian rice in each of the rice-growing regions of Italy for more than 45 years. I continue to be delighted with this unique varieties and balance found between creativity and mastered cooking skills found in Italian rice cookery today. I sincerely hope that this book will inspire you to cook Italian rice, though not only in recipes, but through the wonderful images, technical suggestions, and wine pairings that are in the book.
Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
My wife won't cook rice because it's carbohydrate.
Well, carbohydrates, yes, anything white has carbohydrates. However, we also need to realize the importance of rice. And it's one of the forgotten grain. It's fundamental. It's a basic grain, right? I would rather eat rice today than I would wheat, especially, no one's going to like what I'm going to say, American wheat. Okay? Because of the GMOs, things have been altered. there was an article that was published in Italy, but the research was done at MIT. There were exactly 2 wheats that you should consume, 2 Italian wheats. The first one is Senatore Capelli, and there is another wheat in Sicily, the name escapes me. At Cortino, we use Senatore Capelli in making our pasta. At Gibson's Italia, we use the same. So we go through great lengths to bring these materials into the States. They come at a premium. I mean, this is where the challenge in food, becomes. When you walk down a grocery store aisle and you see all these repacked Italianized products, it's kind of concerning. Because, and then you see, and this has been going on for an extended period of time, for generations. No one is going to pay the prices that I pay for these materials. I'm not saying that the other materials are not good, these are just healthier. And you're referencing health, and the good doctor here was speaking about cardiology, and my answer to him was really very simple. Just buy high quality materials. The marketplace doesn't have access to that. Because here, I'll give you one example. Senatore Capelli, we pay we pay a little more than $1 per pound for flour, which is absurd, okay? But that's the price and that's what it costs. But I want all the certifications, I don't want it to be counterfeit. I want those products to be the products that Italians eat in Italy, and that's what gives us the advantage in the marketplace. We don't take things, twist them around, and then fold them and call this Italian. There's many Italys, as we all know, and if you just think about salumi making, each region has their own perspective salumi, no question. They also have another perspective, the drying of those salumi. Are those salumis moist? Are they firm? And each one has their own way of doing it, and each one says, well, this is the best and this is mine. And with a lot of regional pride. The challenge is in translating that, okay? When you see olives that are labeled Cerignola, or is there certification that says they come from Cerignola? Or are they seeded Cerignola olives that are grown in Greece, or they're grown in Spain, or in somewhere in North Africa? And this is where the problem is. So what we've done, we've done this in a way without bringing attention other than the attention you receive, your palate will have when you say, this tastes really good. It's going to taste really good because we use authentic ingredients, not ingredients that have been blended. Sansa or pomace oil is illegal in Italy for sale. Everywhere else in the world it's legal. So just think of, and you don't have to, we talk about, and it's kind of a shame because I get very wound up about it. When we think about, and I worked in Europe for an extended period of time, all through Europe. I worked in I don't want to bore you with all of this stuff, but I worked in France, and there's no such thing as spaghetti bolognese, right? I don't know where that comes from. It's tagliatelle bolognese, because it's egg pasta that goes with the bolognese, okay? And that all gets, you go to France, they do it, you go to Germany, they do it, you go to Belgium, they do it. Everybody does it, it just got, here in the States we do it too. Let's not lose sight of this. Because people had what they had. When specifically to risotto, to use arborio rice, arborio is intended for minestre, for soups. It's never intended to make arancini, which, if you think about it, all the rice growing regions are all in northern Italy. How did this happen with arancini, right? How did it happen?
Rice balls?
It's a phenomenon, and those phenomenons are what make Italian food. That's what has made all of us who we are. So I want to just say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Another question.
Yes, sir.
I was going to say, I was in Italy with the Venetino Mondo in 2015, and we had a treat because we had 3 different risottos in 3 different towns. We had the red risotto,
Yeah.
we had white, and then
Black
we
one?
had Verde,
The Venere.
porcini.
Red, white, and green.
And the green one, the verde with the porcini. was like, we ate like 4 servings of that before the main meal. Because it
Awesome.
was just like Mama made it.
Right.
But I tried to duplicate it, no such luck.
Well, the challenge is the cheese, the challenge is the butter, the challenge is the olive oil.
Oh.
The wine, all those ingredients all brought together. As simple as that sounds, let me just buy some Italian rice. We just don't buy Italian rice. I mean, you have to really think about it. You know, each rice kernel has its own significance. Each species has its own significance, and all of that's explained in the book. But those are the simple things. It's just like pasta. When you eat pasta in Italy, why is it so good? Because the wheat that they're using is very specific, and it's indigenous to that region. If you go to Puglia and you make cavatelli, of course it's exceptional, because the Senatore Capelli flour that they're using it's essential. It comes through the orecchietti the same way. Then you go to central and northern Italy where it's out of culture and it's being mass produced, and they're taking the wheat from wherever they can get it, and that's what happens.
One more question.
Yes.
I love to cook Italian, and I do my own shopping. I want to just know if I go to a Caputo's or another store, are these ingredients going to be clearly marked, or how do I know I'm buying the right stuff?
That's a great question. The difficulty, you have to really look hard, okay? And when you see what happens, I'm going to tell you what happens, then I'm going to answer the question. The way the process goes is this: whatever Italy does not want to keep in the country, they're sent around the world. That's the easy answer, okay? And here, I'll give you, we'll stay with just wheat. Wheat, rice, corn are fundamentals, okay? Corn in the US is the most engineered, genetically modified product that in existence, okay? Typically, what Italy is going to sell in terms of polenta, unless you're very, very, very specific, and you can find it, but you're going to pay, when you see the price that's being asked, you're going to be, why did I do this, okay? But the real reason is, the real opportunity is to do it, because then you'll see the difference, you know? Here, I found some domestic corn for polenta, no GMOs. And believe me, the only difference was in the structure of the grind of the corn. That was it. It was exceptional. But at here, I want to say it exactly, it was less than a kilo, was $6. But if you think about it in cost proportion, it's still pennies. But people don't think like that. When you go to the store, they've got all these little clever little things, and they say, okay, you know, a liter of oil is this much, and you know, it's per ounce, or whatever the analysis is. No one's ever speaking about the quality of the ingredient. But to answer your question, when you go grocery, you have to be completely anal in the process. And you have to turn those labels and look for the origin, and you're looking for the origin of the product.
Okay.
And that's the answer. Can it be done? Is it disclosed? There's been so much of this, okay? Here, if you want to buy, and you mentioned Caputo, well, there's a flour that comes from Naples. It's called Caputo, okay? The wheat comes from 6 different countries. It's disclosed, so I'm not speaking out of school, okay? But if I want an Italian bag, okay, and I'm going to pay a premium, I don't want wheat from 6 countries. I just don't want it. Do what you want to do. I'm not saying that their wheat is bad. I'm not saying that Russia's wheat is bad, Poland's wheat is bad. American wheat, Canadian wheat, goes to Italy to be manufactured, to be sent back in pasta. Okay? Right?
Yeah, Barilla pasta.
Or whoever, and that's not but it's not to say that it's bad. It's not to say that it's bad. There's a price for everything. It's just saying, you know, food and fashion to me go together. Okay? So if you want to buy well-made clothing and you don't care what things cost, then you're going to buy Italian clothing. But if you are going to, you know, want to eat less costly, you're going to have health problems. I mean, it's that simple. It's not more complicated than that.
And I guess I just can't stay still here. I am an Italian nutritionist that just came back from Italy 2 or 3 weeks ago with a group of people that I take every year to learn about these differences. And I think one of the worst offenders is that we've all been sold a bill of goods about heart healthy olive oil. And just as you're saying about the wheat, the olives are coming from 6 different countries, sent to Italy, they're pressed there, it says packed in Italy, but they're coming from Tunisia and Greece and Spain. Good olive oil should be produced from olives that are picked no more than 8 hours before
From
it's
the grove, absolutely.
So I'm going to start importing olive oil because I'm a nutritionist and I see people pouring this stuff on everything they're eating and they're getting sick. But yet we're told it's heart healthy, so it's very confusing. So
To your point, and sorry to interrupt, but we bring in olive oil, the producer is my friend. In
Yeah.
fact, he'll be here, okay, and there are only olives from his grove.
Yes.
But I pay $10 a liter.
I believe you.
The market will not pay this.
Well, my clients are going to start using it.
Well, you're gonna
because they
die,
wanna
and then you're gonna have to see the good
Yeah.
doctor here.
Yeah.
And it's that simple, but olive oil is good.
It's good, but it's expensive because it's grown organically and it's.
But in the end, it's cheaper.
Yes.
In the end, it's cheaper, but we don't understand that.
Yeah.
And by the time that gets communicated, you know, the rice that I use to cook with at Cortino and Gibson's Italia is Acquarello, okay? It's an aged cannelloni. So I used 1 year aged rice and I used a 7 year aged rice. The aging of rice comes from the Chinese, but all they have is one species of rice from this one producer. All they have is the species of Candeloro. So now, who's going to pay that price? I pay, here, I'll tell you exactly, $7 a kilo. So call it 2 pounds for conversation, 2.2 pounds, I pay $7. Who
Yeah.
is going to pay this money? When you can get, you know, a kilo of arborio for $1.
So think about this, when you go to a restaurant and they give you a little bowl of olive oil, they can't afford that good quality oil that they're gonna have to throw away after you dip one bread. So I'd say skip it.
Well, what we do is, I put the original tin on the table. So it's
Yes.
250 ml, so it's fully disclosed,
Yes.
okay?
We'll
I'm
have to
stealing
talk.
everyone's time here, I need to
We'll have to
apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
There's a great illustration about how the Italians in America have capitalized on Italy's distinction with food and then commercialized Italian food to create a large middle class. Maybe half the Italian American middle class is based on pizza. But certainly in Chicago, you look around and so many successful businesses that deal with food are run by Italians and Italian families. We're going to break for lunch now. There are sandwiches there. You could eat, it's sort of a standing lunch. And I invite you to go into the library and look at the books there and maybe spread out a little bit. There are some chairs